Welcome back, everybody. This is Phil Ferguson. And of course, this is another episode or part of an episode of the Phil Ferguson Show. You can watch this on YouTube, but if you're watching it on YouTube already, you can go check out the podcast, The Phil Ferguson Show. Why is it named that? Because I'm a naming savant. Actually, I didn't even come up with the name. Someone else did. In both cases, by the way, for the podcast and me. And I have with me Fish Stark, who came up with his own name. We were just talking about that in pre-show, which you don't have to go over again, but there is no pre-show content. Maybe I should make some. I don't know. But Fish, you are president,
Executive director.
executive director of the American Humanist Association. And I want to get to, but we're going to tease it out a little bit.
Mhm.
AHA's recent involvement in religious healthcare, religious health insurance. Probably not actually any health.
Definitely not health insurance, and we'll talk about the difference. But yes, we've been taking on the healthcare sharing ministries run by the Christian right, and we'll talk a lot about that.
Yeah. And of course, AHA, what the fuck is that? Tell me about it.
It's a good. It's a great question, although I never heard it phrased quite that way before. So
I'm very
the
thankful.
American Humanist Association is the organization that represents humanists across the United States. Humanism is a belief system that is for people who believe in the golden rule, but not in God. It's for anyone who believes that science tells us what's real and compassion tells us what's right. It's the belief system of America's greatest rebels, from Frederick Douglass to John Dewey to the founder of Planned Parenthood, the founder of the National Organization for Women. It is the intellectual and moral engine of American progress. So you've got people from Albert Einstein to Jonas Salk to Steve Wozniak who were humanists. So all these things that we rely on, like public schools and Planned Parenthood and personal computers and the polio vaccine, they came from humanists not by accident, but because humanists have a deep and enduring belief that humans can solve human problems, not wait for someone else to solve them for us, and that our morality rests on advancing human dignity, not abstractions or holy texts. And so the AHA has been around for 85 years, building community for humanists, giving the now over 100 million non-religious people in America something to belong to and believe in, and fighting like hell against the Christian nationalists in Congress and the courts who want to roll back our rights. So that's a little bit about what we do. And I've been Phil, I am in 2 weeks. I am going to have been at the AHA for a full year.
I was going to say about 11 months ago.
Hmm.
I'm kind of breaking my rule because normally I don't have people back any sooner than 12 months.
Ooh,
I
I
was
guess
like,
I'm special.
you know what? I got something I want to talk about. I'm going to break the rule because I made the rule, right? It's like I'm God. I can make the rules and I can change the rules.
Well, that's humanists believe morality is constructed, Phil. So have at it.
Just constructed the fuck out of it. The website, of course, is americanhumanists.org.
You can also go to humanist.org if you like. It's shorter.
Nice. And I'm assuming if they poke around, there's ways to give. You guys could
Yep.
next
Ab-
to me.
Absolutely. So we are an organization that does a lot with a little less than $3 million a year. We don't take money from, right wing billionaires or big corporations. We are funded by tens of thousands of members, most of whom are giving less than $50 a year. And when you sign up for a membership, you get our quarterly magazine, The Humanist, which is an award-winning journal of social inquiry through a humanist lens. You get discounts to our online classes and our conventions. You can vote for the board. We are a member-run organization. So the people who can hire and fire me are elected directly by the people who give us money. And you get the thrill of supporting our lobbyists and our lawyers and our community organizers as we try and build and defend humanism.
Now, 2 months ago in June, you got to experience as the executive officer your first conference, right, in Chicago. And how did that all
Yes,
go?
I did. Yes, I did. Oh my gosh. Well, it went really well, Phil. I will. We gave our Humanist of the Year award, which over the years has gone to people like Dr. Spock, and Salman Rushdie, to Jelani Cobb, the dean of the Columbia Journalism School and the writer for the New Yorker, because we felt like in this moment it's really important to shine a spotlight on what journalists are doing. And he gave a wonderful presentation about his work We gave out awards to the executive director of Equality Florida, who's standing right dead center in the middle of the path of Ron DeSantis's attacks on LGBT people, and
Familiar.
State Senator Megan Hunt, an open humanist. Yeah, have you had her on the show?
I have not, but I live in Florida. So, uh,
Oh, there you go.
yeah,
So yeah, so great people, and State Senator Megan Hunt from Nebraska, who's a great open humanist. So that the conference went well in terms of having wonderful presentations. We had a contest for humanism has always been a source of big American ideas, and so we brought in some speakers who were talking about what they think is the next big American idea humanism should advance, and we launched. And this is we're going to do a big announcement about this later, but I'll give your listeners a sneak peek. We launched a creator fund because the right wing invests tons of money. The religious right invests tons of money in online creators to help them professionalize and grow their shows, right? Charlie Kirk started out with a $10,000 grant from Foster Friends. We launched that grant, and at the conference, we got a major donation of over $100,000 to invest directly in helping humanist creators grow their audiences and talk about humanism and advertise for the AHA. So big things are coming. We're working to bring humanism out to a new generation. We want to be growing, not graying, and be an intergenerational movement. And so there were a lot of good things that got kicked off at that conference.
I'm contemplating as we talk. Maybe I should change my description when people ask, "Well, what are you?" One of the things I'll tell people is that I'm an evangelical atheist, and part of part of that is a hook for them to go, "What the fuck does that mean?" Right? And so now you have the conversation, but maybe I should start peppering in evangelical humanist.
I mean, hey, I always love that little bait and switch. Whenever I'm on a plane and someone asks me what I do, a lot of my travel is to go around and talk to people about humanism and help people see it as a positive force in their lives. And I often go and do it at Unitarian churches because there's a really big, well, about half of Unitarians consider themselves humanist. And so when I'm sitting next to somebody and the guy in seat 1B asks me what I do, I tell him I'm an atheist preacher. And that really makes their ears perk up. And they have a lot of questions after that. It's a good way to get things started and to sort of lay out, hey, actually, there might be some commonalities between what we all believe, even if we might have different visions of what's in the sky.
Yeah, I've had a couple times where I've been out with dinner with friends or something like that, and my wife might say something like, "You're kind of loud. Other people around us can hear you," and my response is, "Yeah, that's my intent. I'm not just talking to the person that I'm talking to. I'm talking so 8 people have to listen to me because social norms say they can't say anything to me, and so I can say whatever I." And I've also done that on the plane where people in the row in front and behind are going to hear my conversation. My voice carries and it actually works in my benefit. 2026. Is there a conference in 2026? What's going on there?
So the AHA's conference is every other year between virtual and in person. And we do that because there are some people who can't afford the cost of an in person conference. And then there are some people who prefer coming and gathering together in person. So we want to satisfy everyone in our membership. So 2025 was in person. 2026 is going to be virtual. And if folks want an in person conference, we really encourage them to go to the Humanist International Conference, which is going to be in Ottawa, Canada. So not too far away for us Americans. And then 2027, we'll be back to in person.
Absolutely. In the international conference, are you guys a member of that organization or you're just going?
Yeah, no. So Humanist International is a membership organization of all the different big humanist organizations around the world. And they do a lot of the policy and work to, fight blasphemy laws, to work at the UN, to make things safe for humanists and atheists in developing countries. So actually, when you become a member of the AHA, a percentage of your membership goes to support Humanist International and goes to run their programs to help rescue humanists who are in dire situations in repressive countries, or fight for the rights of people in repressive religious environments at the UN.
My understanding is that conference was supposed to happen in Washington, D.C. It's been moved to Ottawa. Do you know why?
Yeah, it was supposed to happen in Washington, D.C. We were excited to help with it. And then, the organizing team made the decision, which I think was unfortunate, but the right decision, that we couldn't ask people from around the world to travel to Washington, D.C. to attend what is, in some sense, a political conference in an environment where Donald Trump is hell bent on prosecuting the argument that atheism is un-American, that America is fundamentally Christian, that there is an anti-Christian bias that exists in America that is making America worse, and so we think that and combine that with the anti-immigrant, anti-foreigner sentiment he's spreading.
Right.
Our conclusion was that we couldn't, in good conscience, ask somebody to travel from Turkey or Ghana, as there are thriving humanist organizations in those places, to Washington, D.C., they'd be putting themselves at risk by doing that. And that's a real shame. I mean, we were literally in America the progenitors of constitutional religious freedom, right? Religious freedom as a birthright was born here. And now we have a situation where religious minorities have to cancel conferences because they don't feel safe to have members of their group travel to America. That's a travesty.
Yeah, I also find I'm more and more tempted if I travel to another country just to tell people I'm Canadian.
Yeah, no,
But
I agree. I saw a Canadian brass band last night at Chautauqua, and they made tons and tons and tons of jokes about how happy they were to be Canadian, and the audience laughed right along with them.
very, very nice. Now, you guys also do legal battles. What's going on in that realm?
Yeah, so the AHA does a lot to fight for our rights in the policy work, but we also know that, making sure that we have equal rights and we stop the Christian nationalists in their tracks means taking them on in the courts. So we just won a big legal victory against the state of West Virginia. So in January, the far right wing government of West Virginia took $5 million dollars out of the Water Infrastructure Fund. Now, I don't know if any of your listeners live in West Virginia. I used to live in West Virginia, and West Virginia has the worst public water quality in the entire country. Even in the cities, the water runs brown out of your tap some days. And they took this money out of the Water Infrastructure Fund and they sent it to an out of state Catholic college that only gives degrees in Catholic studies, that only got started a few years ago to open a new campus in West Virginia to teach their, religious program. And part of the grant was supposed to go to opening an anti abortion think tank with state funds. And we got a state judge to say, no, that's illegal. You cannot use public dollars in this way. You can't use it for religious instruction. You can't use it for religious advocacy. And so now the burden is on the state to spend that money properly. And so that's just an example of the kinds of cases
Right.
that we're winning. Down in Florida this year, we just won a big settlement against the city of Ocala, Florida. Again, they use taxpayer dollars to hold and promote a public Christian prayer vigil. And we said, look, that's blatantly unconstitutional. If the mayor wants to go to a vigil that the church is organizing, that's the mayor's business. But for the city to spend taxpayer funds to put it together, that's an improper use of people's money. And we won from a Bush appointed judge a federal court verdict agreeing that what they did was illegal, and then we convinced them to reach a settlement that locks in that verdict as precedent, saying what they did, nobody can do that. And so those are the kinds of legal battles that we're taking on for you. And by the way, if your listeners have feel that they've experienced religious discrimination or feel that their tax dollars are being used to promote religion in some way we may not know about, legal@americanhumanist.org is the address to email. We brought in an amazing legal director this year. He comes from Compassion and Choices. That's the organization that fights for death with dignity laws in all 50 states. And we've got a really talented legal team that is going to fight for the rights of humanists everywhere.
And of course, when you won that case, AHA probably made what, like $10 million? dollars?
Don't I wish? We for the West Virginia case, we partnered with the ACLU, and so we didn't. I have no idea actually whether there will be court fees in that case, but if they do, they'll go to our friends at the ACLU, which I'm not upset about. And in Ocala, we actually turned down settlement money in order to get a good verdict locked in as precedent on the books. That was part of.
You
We
are.
said, we didn't bring this case to take money from the city or
Right.
to make ourselves richer. We brought this case to set the precedent that you don't do this with taxpayer dollars. And so that was how part of how we struck a deal with the city.
I like it. Of course, the main reason I wanted to talk today, I've covered this on my podcast in the past, but it's these organizations, maybe religious, maybe just someone who's trying to make money. Uh,
Mm.
there's insurance. I don't know, health insurance that religious organizations put together to cut out the middleman and the profits, and you're going to get better care and treatment because religion is all about love and happiness. So why are you guys being so mean and what's going on?
Yeah, so we there was an article in the Christian Post not too long ago with the executive director of the Healthcare Sharing Alliance, which represents a bunch of right wing organizations that run things called healthcare sharing ministries, talking about how terribly mean and nasty these atheists were being to her because these atheist organizations were introducing these bills to regulate healthcare sharing ministries. And one thing I would say is, actually, we're not an atheist organization. We're a humanist organization. There are some similarities, but there are differences, kind of like there are differences between healthcare sharing ministries and health insurance. And that's why it's important that we define those properly to consumers. So, what you're talking about are healthcare sharing arrangements. They are alternatives to insurance that you can legally buy into. And they are, and ones that are operated by religious organizations are called healthcare sharing ministries. Now, to be clear, the AHA supports people having the legal right to start healthcare sharing ministries and to buy into them if they want. We don't want to restrict consumer choice. But here's the problem: healthcare sharing ministries often market themselves like insurance. They use language that is similar to language insurers use. They train brokers to promote their plans like their insurance. When somebody calls an insurance broker to get insurance, brokers get favorable commissions when they sell healthcare sharing ministries. But the problem is these plans aren't insurance. There are a couple key differences. Number one is insurance plans, actual health insurance, they're required to pay out in claims a certain percentage, at least 80% of the funds that they take in. Healthcare sharing ministries are not legally required to pay any claim they receive. And in practice, they often pay out only around 60% of their claims. And the only reason we know this is because we passed a law in Colorado requiring transparency of healthcare sharing ministries, because in other states in the country, they're not required to share any of this information about how many people they cover, how much they pay out in claims. They are some of the most secretive organizations because they use the protections of being a religious institution to hide data about what they do from consumers and the government. Now, we're not suggesting that churches should have to, make all their funding known to the IRS. We think that healthcare sharing ministry should be regulated in the same way Christian hospitals are. If you go to a Catholic hospital, you can trust that it's mostly going to be operated like a regular hospital, and they have to disclose certain things and they have to follow certain regulations. The other problem with healthcare sharing ministries is that people buy into them thinking they're going to, oh, okay, I've got health insurance. It's going to cover the things that you would expect health insurance to cover, right? But it often doesn't cover things that people use health insurance for the most, things like preventative care, mental health care, prescription medication. They can choose to cover or not cover anything they want, and they often have very restrictive conditions. Sometimes those are based on sort of the Christian morality of their association. Sometimes they're frankly just transparent plays to make money, right? Like, for instance, we're hearing from the Christian conservatives about the birth rate and how we want to, support motherhood. But one of the biggest healthcare sharing ministries will not cost share for maternity care or miscarriage. They will not give you a dime for maternity care if you get pregnant in the first 6 months of your membership. That's not, I can't find anywhere in the Bible that justifies that. So, and you've got some of these organizations are paying out huge salaries, taking a bunch of money in and spending it on administrative costs. And again, we're not saying people shouldn't have the right to buy into these organizations if they want, but they deserve transparency about what they're getting up front. The government deserves transparency into how these organizations operate. And we have to rein in some of the deceptive advertising practices that they use to hook in consumers.
Absolutely. I'm all for it. It's such a boondoggle. It's a weird there's a demand for it because regular health insurance can be kind of crappy. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
been there, done that. Other segments on that. We're not going to go over that today. My local hospital here in Central Florida is Advent Health, and it's called Advent because it's from the Seventh Day Adventist Church. And so in the hospital, there's Bible quotes all over the place. They have a morning prayer. I happened to be there one day, and I asked a staff person if they're obligated to listen to that. And she said no. And I said, okay, well, while it's playing, can you go outside? And she goes, no. I go, well, now you're obligated to listen to it. I mean, because you can't escape it. And they always ask, is there any religious opinions that you have that might affect your care or treatment? And first I got annoyed by that question. And now I just embrace it. And I said, yes, I have religious opinions. And they're like, oh, okay, what are they? And I said, I demand that the best science be used in my healthcare treatment.
Gee, me too.
Yeah, I don't want anything other than the best.
Well, so just to share about the healthcare sharing ministry work. So we introduced bills in 4 states this year: Oregon, Vermont, New York, and Minnesota. And we had on some of those bills, we had hearings, we were featured on state TV. We did a lot of work raising awareness and moving forward the conversation about regulation. And the reason the Christian right is mad at us is we made them spend a whole lot of money trying to lobby against us and trying to lobby against these regulations. And that's part of the work that the whole secular movement has to be doing right now. We need to, the Christian right has won a lot of victories because they fight a lot of battles on a lot of fronts. And we are in the business of contesting them everywhere we can so that they don't fundamentally remake America and build a world around their narrow view of morality and their narrow set of biblical laws. Not because they shouldn't be allowed to live by those laws, but because they can't force the rest of us to. So we've got the AHA is bigger than it's been in a long time. When I started, we had 12 staff. Now we have 17. We're growing our membership, our donations every month because we're showing people that when they invest in us, we're going to turn that into real policy in states, real legal battles that win against the Christian right, and real power in Washington, D.C. The Congressional Free Thought Caucus, which we started in our conference room it's an interfaith group of members of Congress, the only open atheists and agnostics in Congress alongside Jews and Christians and Muslims fighting for a secular democracy. It's grown 50% since inauguration. It's one of the fastest growing caucuses in Congress. It's almost as big as the Freedom Caucus. So we're going to keep growing that power. We're going to keep fighting in the courts. We just had 8 new chapters sign up this week. We are going to keep growing our local groups across the country because right now everyone is lonely and isolated, and humanism can be something for the 100 million of us who don't want to go to church. And we're building out new programming for parents, and we're investing in reaching young people where they are, which is on the internet. So we'll have our own podcast to launch in a couple of months.
Excellent. And as you were hinting at, American Humanist Association is not inherently atheistic or even religiously antagonistic. You can be an atheist, an agnostic, you can be a Christian, you can be a Muslim, and you can join AHA because you believe in the values that it promotes, right? Does that seem fair?
Exactly. What I would say is there's a difference between atheism and non-theism, right? I personally am an atheist. Most humanists are. But humanism is for anyone who believes that you can't base reality or morality on something you can't prove. And so that includes people like, Thomas Paine, right? Famous American humanist and American founder. So I think there's a difference between atheism and non-theism, right? And that distinction is important to understanding who's included in humanism. I'm an atheist. Many atheists are humanists, right? Many humanists are atheists. But humanism's always been inclusive of people like, for instance, Thomas Paine, founder and incredible humanist. He was a deist. He believed that there must have been a God that created the universe, but then he didn't think that God was particularly relevant. He didn't think the Bible told what was real. He didn't think it should dictate morality. And so there are plenty of people in America right now who consider themselves Christians, Jews, Muslims, whose commitment to their religion is primarily cultural, or who use God to, I meet people all the time who say, well, I think I agree with you on everything, but I believe in God. And I say, well, what's God? And they say, well, God is love, or God is nature, or God is consciousness. And I said, hey, I believe in love, nature, and consciousness. Those things are real, and those are things that I love. So we have a difference about semantics, not values. So yeah, humanism can be for atheists, agnostics, deists, people who have a cultural connection to a religious belief. But what we believe is that morality comes from human need, not ancient texts, and we can't base our understanding of what's real on something that can't be proven true.
Fantastic. I love that and support that. And that's very close to something I normally would say. You know, why I'm an evangelical atheist is because I think I'm right. And I want others to think the way that I'm thinking. Not necessarily, although I would be okay with it, getting rid of the religious baggage. But I think if more people think about reality, live in reality, it's going to be easier for us to solve more and more problems that affect us and each other. And kind of side tangent, I lately see a lot of these videos of people. I know you're not can't do a political thing, so forgive me for being political here for a minute. But people talking about Trump and they going, "That's not what I voted for. My family's going to lose my our farm." And I'm waiting to see a video, and I'm sure there must be something out there that someone complains about Trump that didn't get screwed because it's always we got screwed. Okay, well,
Hmm.
that's cool. I get it. I'm sympathetic to that, but why aren't you concerned about anyone else? And maybe that's something humanism can bring to people. It's a framework of a way to look at the world and recognizes the importance of taking care of each other and making the world a better place for everybody without imposing any religious view.
That's right. Humanism is the antithesis of the I got mine, screw you authoritarian ethos that's dominating our politics. And, you can, and I can say this, part of the reason that we need to think this way is because we're seeing in the last few months, if we live in a world where people can make up their own truth and call it reality without proof, the people who benefit are always the powerful.
Yeah,
That kind of situation always benefits the people in the pulpit, the people in the presidency, and the people with the purse strings. And the only way we build a world where everyone counts and everyone matters is a world where truth and morality get constructed from the bottom up, not handed down from a mountaintop.
absolutely. One of my favorite types of films are futuristic dystopian movies, but I'm finding them less entertaining than I used to. So,
Right? I look at those and I'm like, oh, this is a documentary.
yeah,
I don't like documentaries. I want escapism.
I just don't like that as a documentary. I want to be respectful for your time, and we've had a great chat. But I want to leave it open. Is there anything else that you want to cover about you or AHA before we wrap up?
Phil, just thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure chatting with you. I love your show, love hanging out with you at all the conferences, and I hope that people will come out and see both of us on the road. I know we're probably gonna we're gonna be at a lot of humanist events, and I hope people will, if people like what my ask to people is, sure, join the American Humanist Association, send us some money if you like what we're doing, you like what we're hearing. But more importantly, if you like what you're hearing, get off the internet and come and meet people in person because they cannot divide us, they can't break us apart, they can't stop us if we're getting together and doing the work in person.
And once again, ladies and gentlemen, this is Fish Stark from the American Humanist Association, and I'd like to thank a friend of mine. Thank you for being on the Phil Ferguson Show, and we'll just wrap it up there. And again, thank you for coming on.
Thanks, Phil. You're my friend too.